Dzień dobry, witamy Państwa bardzo serdecznie i od razu przestawiamy się na język naszej konferencji, czyli na język angielski, mimo tego, że w zasadzie żadnych Anglików tutaj nie będzie, ale to będzie nasz wspólny polsko-czeski język. Good morning and welcome to the first edition, hopefully not the last, of our Czech-Polish forum. Martin L., Gospodarskie Nowiny.
Good morning, thank you for the invitation.
And Marek Teichman, Dziennik Gazeta Prawna. Together we are going to discuss Polish-Czech relation, and just a few words at the very beginning. Our main goal is to underline the importance of the Polish-Czech relations when it comes to the economy, and we kind of believe that in the public debate there is not enough recognition on how significant these relations are and how beneficial they are for many Czech and Polish companies, and how many opportunities arise in the future cooperation. And well, there are some problems that we have to cope with, but to cope with them we have to name them first, and this is one of the main goals of this conference.
I'm active in Czech-Polish relations for some time. I'm member of a committee of the Czech-Polish Forum, and I know that we still do not know each other quite enough. And any opportunity, business, cultural, economic, political, is a good one to talk to each other, to get to know each other. Of course, yes, we are using English language, but sometimes even this might improve, especially on the Czech side. But you Poles, you are living in your illusion that you know the Czechs, but you know your illusion about the Czechs. But on the Czech side, it's even worse because we don't have any illusions or any imaginations about the Poles.
So we believe in our vision, and on the other side there is even no vision. And this is actually quite sad when you compare these with amount of money that is going the other ways. And one more thing, we are meeting in Katowice during the EKG, European Economic Congress, and in a way, Śląsk region, the whole borderland between Poland and Czech Republic, is the example of how successful the cooperation can be, because this is one of the industrial heartlands of Europe, where the cooperation of the businesses, cooperation of the companies is creating the well, let's say industrial powerhouse of Europe, and the future development of this industrial powerhouse can be very beneficial for both countries. Anyway, well, I hope that this is the first edition, and I hope that we will have many successful discussions. Martin, the first guest is yours, and just the last thing that I want to say, we are going to be with you, with the audience, for the next 2.5 hours, so feel free to stay with us. We are going to discuss the European dimension of the Polish-Czech cooperation, strategical level cooperation, and the companies cooperation. We will be discussing how companies can benefit from this cooperation together. We will be inviting number of guests over here, and this panel discussion is being transmitted on the Dziennik, all the websites of Dziennik, and on Gospodarskie Nowiny as well.
Our first guest is supposed to be Marian Pecha, Director General of the Czech Ministry of Industry. He just got an important phone call, but yes, he's coming right now. Please take a seat.
Hello. Sorry.
So again, Marian Pecha, Director General of Czech Ministry of Industry and Trade, who is from the region, born, but I'm from the eastern Bohemia, also from the region bordering Poland. You are from this region. Let's start with a kind of a big political question, or big practical question maybe. What's the current place of Poland in the Czech trade and industrial strategies?
Well, you stated it correctly that even we have much more in common, especially in energy field and electricity and all the problems connected with the heavy industry. We are not really sharing the experience and not really knowing each other. So I think that's That's the kind of strategy we would like to work on right now from the point of view of the Czech government, to really know each other, because as stated here at the conference, the prices of energy are determining the competitiveness of the whole region of Central and Eastern Europe. And if we want to be competitive to United States and other world leaders, we need to work with the energy infrastructure. We need to make sure that we are competitive on that level, because on the other levels we are fine. We are able to work hard. The region of Silesia, for example, is going through transformation for last almost 20 years. So we will definitely survive this transformation. I have no doubt about it, but we need to talk about it. We need to really work on the Czech-Polish strategy and make sure that we understand each other.
And where do you see, except the energy, because this energy is kind of obvious issue on which both countries are working hard especially during the last year and a half. But where do you see other biggest potential for Czech-Polish cooperation, in which concrete parts of the economy or business?
Being in Katowice, I would go back to the Silesia region. If you look to the Czech part, Slovakia part, and the Polish part, you realize that 10 million people live in the area. That's the same amount of people living in the Czech Republic. So we are close to each other in a way that we need to share everything, almost share the consumers, as we yesterday discussed the potential of the support of
Tourism.
Tourism, yes, thank you very much. Support of tourism, support of heavy industry, energy transformation, sharing the same infrastructure. I have mentioned that 15 years ago there was a big pressure on building the road infrastructure in the area when the first big investment were coming into the region, like Hyundai, Kia, and other big manufacturers. We need to build the infrastructure from the point of view of highways. That's, I think, we did good. And now
not in eastern part or eastern Bohemia.
Okay, but on the level of Silesia, we did what we need to do, and now there's a part of doing the same on the level of energy and on the level of tourism, building the ways for bikes going from one country to each other, and I think the region of Silesia and the Katowice, it's definitely in a good hands, because both topics discussed yesterday actually were connected with the heavy industry and the energy transformation and with tourism. And from my perspective, I would love to have more functioning industry, even the heavy one, producing competitive products all over the world. But we can also see good examples of closing the factories like Dolny Oblast in Ostrava and having it as industrial monuments and industrial skanzens, attracting the tourists and future tourists all over the world as a part of our history.
And if we go from the regional perspective to the, let's say, broader perspective of both Czech Republic and Poland, as far as I know, that there is a lot of Polish business in Czech Republic, investments, trade, but there is much less, lower number of Czech companies being active on the Polish market, and quite often they are complaining about how it's hard to enter the Polish market. Do you see any obstacles for the Czech companies entering the Polish market?
You mentioned that from the beginning. I think we Czechs don't know Polish as well as the Polish know us. It's made by culture. As I lived on the borders, I understand that from on the part of the Polish station, all the Polish people were traders, interested in trade. That's in their blood. In Czech, we are not very front going in a trade. That's why there is the difference. It's a cultural thing.
We are quite often mentioning the infrastructure connecting us together. There is a infamous case of D11 from our side of the highway. Can we expect some improvements in the upcoming years of both railway and highway connection?
Definitely, railway will look great because the support from Recovery Resilience Fund and other European money is in a way of green economy. So there will be heavy investments in railway infrastructure, which is needed, and in the highway infrastructure, as I mentioned before. A lot was done, and now we need to finance from the state budget. But in this way, I think in Poland and in Czech, we have the similar obstacles coming with administrative burden and very slow building act processes connected with the building permit and so on. I think that's what we need to improve generally in Czech. Maybe learn from Poland, which very much simplified the building act and now is able to build much faster than we can in Czech. That's another great example where we can learn from each other.
Also, connecting with this infrastructure, there is a lot of talk in the last months about the Stork 2 pipeline project, where I heard recently from one high position Polish official that now the ball is on the Czech side, while previously we heard that the ball is more on the Polish side. So can you inform us about the current state of the play around this pipeline?
Well, we need this pipeline. It's a difficult discussion going back and forward with the European Commission, as do we need.
So it's about money.
It's about the taxonomy, do not significant harm rules. Let's say about the whole green transformation. I think that the gas pipelines will play significant role in the future, and they are also very important for the transformation for next, let's say, 10 years. Even though, as we will be green, we will not really need coal and gas, but we will still need gas lines when in future they can be transferred to hydrogen lines. And for the region of Silesia is important because we have here heavy industry on both sides, and there is not enough energy which is consumed on the spot, so we need to redistribute it. And with coming of the green energy photovoltaics, the sharing of the electricity and energy generally is much cheaper than storing it. So if both countries is investing heavily in photovoltaics, when there will be sunshine, there will be energy cheap, and you need to store it and transform it very easily throughout the region. And that's why we need to work on infrastructure. So from this point of view, Stork 2 is very important project for the Czech government.
So we can expect that Stork 2 will be a double use project for gas and hydrogen for the future.
It's hydrogen ready.
Okay. There is another energy issue being quite important for both countries, and this is nuclear energy. The Czech Republic is preparing the competition for the new reactor. Poland is having a lot of plans. I'm as covering Polish energy for some time. I'm a little bit skeptical how and when they start to build the new reactors, but they need a technology, they need a people. Is there any field for cooperation in this particular part of the energy on between those two countries?
Definitely, I think we can show the example, because in Czech we have two existing nuclear power plants which we are proud of. Actually, Czech people are very proud of the nuclear energy in just all around Europe. I think we are on one of the top level where the general public is supporting the nuclear energy. We wanna build other few more nuclear energy power plants. In this way, again, cooperation together can help understand the energy potential of the Central and Eastern Europe from what we can produce the electricity.
And my last question concerning the another industry which is now high on the agenda. This is defense industry. I see certain incompatibility because the Polish defense industry is mostly in the state hands, while the Czech one is mostly in the private hands. But do you see any possibilities for cooperation? Because we clearly see, because of the impact of the Russian war in Ukraine, that there is a necessity for Europe to cooperate more in this field. Do you see any particular possibilities for the Czech-Polish cooperation in this field?
Well, for the Czech Republic, I wish for bigger support of R&D, because as all the countries around us are now thinking what to buy from the point of view of new technologies in the military field, investing in our R&D in private hands can make us really competitive on the world market, because we can produce a very good quality defense technologies, and in this way, again, we need to share the strategy, what we should buy on the level on the Central and Eastern Europe. And from the point of view of Ministry of Industry, we wish that we are buying from the local producers.
Thank you very much. We have a lot of opportunities, a lot of possibilities for the Czech-Polish industry and trade cooperation. It was Marian Pecha, Director General from Czech Ministry of Industry and Trade, for the Czech Polish forum in Dziennik Gazeta Prawna and Hospodářské noviny.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your participants.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I would invite Marek with his next guest.
Thank you, Martin. Yes, Dziennik Gazeta Prawna. But we are sending our warm greetings to our friends in Gazeta Wyborcza. The director of the whole event is very sad with me, because once again we just moved from one part of the discussion to the another. But I think we can start. Thank you, Martin, and you will join us in a moment for a discussion about the European dimension. But right now, I'm turning to our other guest, Piotr Arak, director of the Polish Economic Institute. Hello.
Hi. Hello.
Every single panel or every single discussion has to have a title, and we gave the title to this discussion as well: Industrial Powerhouse of Europe. Meaning that Central Eastern Europe might be benefiting from the process that is right now being named as a friendshoring, shortening of the supply chains, whatever you name it. But the race for the security that is happening as a result of both the COVID experience and Russian aggression on Ukraine experience, it is making both politicians and business leaders to rethink their supply security. And there are some people who believe that we might benefit from this trend. you researched on the issue, have a very interesting points that are being widely discussed over here in European Economic Congress. What's your take on this chance for both Poland, Czech Republic, and wider CEE? What is the chance, and where are the obstacles?
Well, first off, it's a situation where the Americans securitize trade. So trade is not just free trade anymore. It is a way we basically weaponize trade after the incursion of Ukraine of Russia into Ukraine last year. We provided economic sanctions never seen before to one country in such a short time. And basically, trade has become one of the elements of the security realm in the United States. So you're going to have discussions on trade issues, trade-related issues in the Pentagon, in the Defense Department, not the Trade Department that much. So these two became quite important. And this started, of course, before with small steps or big steps, as the presidency of Donald Trump in 2016, the zombification of WTO, which started before with Obama's presidency. And we saw that the international trade wasn't a stalemate. Currently, with the threats to the international order, we see that lots of corporations, lots of companies do take geoeconomic or geostrategic issues into calculations, into their Excel spreadsheet as a risk to take. And that's why this region, so Central and Eastern Europe, which has a lot of human capital, has quite complex economies, not as complex as the Western economies, but is an export powerhouse. So we're an exporting economy using the power of globalization. We can be a sort of economic or industrial powerhouse for the European market. It's not only us. It could be Turkey. It could be some countries which are just neighboring neighbors of the European Union. It could be even Ukraine during the reconstruction process or after it when it comes a member of the single market. So this is the reason, but thinking about the production for the European market, not for the American market, not for the Southeast Asian market. And it's not that this process is massive. You're just going to have lots of surveys of the managers from corporations in the European Union saying, okay, if we're going to decide to reinvest capital, you're going to do it in Germany, then you're going to do it Poland, somewhere there is Czech Republic, and other Central and European countries as well, somewhere on the top, because we have good experiences. But it doesn't mean we're going to close down the manufacturing plant right now, which we have operating in Southeast Asia. Maybe in the next 5 or 7 years, when we stop producing some specific car parts, which were produced in China, we're going to produce them here in Europe.
So how can we build the environment in which we can benefit from? How can we influence this decision to actually happen in these 5 to 7 years time?
Well, one of the niceties of having this discussions like this one is creating narratives, and it's quite important for Poland, for Czech Republic, for Slovakia, even for Hungary, which has some difficult geopolitical debates, internal, which somehow are seen external in terms of how it processes the geopolitical threat to Central and Eastern Europe from Russia, quite differently than us, and transatlantic relations as well. It's beneficial to talk about this. So we're open. We're open for business. We're a friendly country. We have lots of young, educated people. Actually, the demographic challenges are not as important as they used to be before, due to the influx of migrants and refugees to our region, due to people coming even from Russia and from Belarus to Poland in order to work, to find a better way of living in a democratic and liberal environment than Russia or Belarus. And this means that we can attract more businesses. Czech Republic has the sixth most complex economy according to the Atlas of Complexity. Is one of the most advanced exporting economies in the world, as United States or Germany. Poland ranks 20th in the Atlas out of 133 economies. We're still could be more competitive, be more advanced in terms of the exports as Czech Republic. But we have good basis in order to produce quite complex products.
Are we competitors with Poles and Czechs? Are we competitors? Are we partners?
Yeah, well, Czech Republic is the third largest partner in terms of exports of Poland. We're the second, I think, for Czech Republic. So the mutual relationship in terms of car manufacturing and production exists, and it's quite important. I wouldn't say we're direct competitors in terms of the things that we're going to produce, but maybe future, if Poland is going to have more manufacturing places of cars, so end products, as Czech Republic, then we might be. But we do jump to different fields. Czech Republic has a strong chemical sector. It produces currently perfumes, for example, and exports more perfumes. We have a sector that is going from TVs to computer parts and going more advanced electronics, which is somehow different than what Czech Republic is doing. The important thing is to have smart diversification. And this is an important challenge for Czech Republic, which we kind of, because of the scale of economy, have mastered. So we have smart diversification of different products from different branches of the economy, which somehow always have some demand. And that's why Poland, in most occasions, it doesn't have recession.
But by saying we meant Poland.
Poland, yeah.
And how do you what is your perspective on how we organize the cooperation between Poland and Czech Republic? Can we benefit more from mutual investment, cooperation, partnership?
Well, I think there's not, and this goes for all Central and European countries. We don't trade enough. We trade with Western Europe quite a lot. We don't trade with our southern partners enough in order to create value. We don't export, and vice versa, services enough. We're not as open as we could be in terms of international cooperation, doing joint venture kind of projects. And there are very many cultural similarities that would enable such cooperation. But what we lack is the things that are from the longue durée processes that destroyed interconnectedness of Central Europe. Meaning infrastructure, connectiveness. It takes a long time to drive through the motorway from Warsaw to Prague. It takes a lot of time to go from Warsaw to Budapest. If we had more connections, like how easy it is to go from Paris to Berlin or from Paris to Brussels, then the interconnectedness would be higher. Transport infrastructure is the basis point, and we still don't have enough of that. And that's why the Free Seas initiative, when it was started in 2000, at the end of 2015, at the beginning of 2016, was so important because we want to decrease the infrastructural gap, increase connectiveness, because then money follows.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that we need more public projects together? Would they help us? Do we manage them properly?
But the difficult part is, as we are sometimes competitors, it is difficult to sometimes allocate money in order to build another road, which could, for example, benefit the neighbor more than the country itself. This is the issues that there are with some roads between Slovakia and Czech Republic, which could benefit the whole region, but not directly the country itself. That's why if you have an intra-governmental body or a development bank, development fund, which finances such projects, it's easier to go through than a direct agreement between some governments in order to do that. That's why the European Union managed to create this TNT network of motorways and connectiveness in the Western world, Western Europe, quite some time. And we need to follow that road. Trade more, increase the connectiveness, and then basically you're going to have more economic cooperation.
And the very last question, both Poland, the Czech Republic, and the ERC countries are struggling with the demographics. How big is the issue? How is it really that that much of a challenge?
Well, it is. We're running a deficit in terms of the number of people. Currently, we're in a situation where you have a high influx of migrants and refugees due to the Russian invasion. It's very unfortunate for the Ukrainian people what's happening, but it's beneficial for the economies here. It's not a long-lasting process, though. So it's not that we're going to see 2 million, 3 million people coming in and staying for sure for the next years and 3 or 4 years. Well, the demographic challenge is going to be present here in the 4 or 5 years to come. But what we need to take into account, what we cannot project in the demographic process, in the demographic projections, is how the market is going to adapt. So, how many people do we actually need to produce a car? How many people does a new manufacturing plant actually need? So, are we going to need more engineers, which we have good schools to prepare for the market, or do we need more, workers working directly at the floor and at the manufacturing floor? So it's a question when Chat GPT and these kinds of distortions to the market can create actually value and decrease the tension of demographics in a region like that. We're not aware of how it's going to play out the next years. I'm quite optimistic in the sense that technology always was benefiting the productivity of economies. So we can enhance the productivity of Poland, of Czech Republic, just using technology, using robots, automatization. That's what France, Germany used before.
Thank you very much for joining us, Piotr Arak, on our Czech-Polish forum. And next we will have the discussion about the European integration and Polish-Czech relation in European Union.
Thank you. Dzięki.
Yes. Not untypical Polish panel for 45 minutes. And I don't have any time. Hello to the next panel of our Czech-Polish forum of Dziennik Gazeta Prawna and Hospodářské noviny. Martin L. from Czech Economic Daily, and I have two distinguished guests to talk about the European Union and Polish and Czech place in it within the global framework, let's put it like that. My guest is former Mr. Europe of the Polish government, currently Deputy Director of Polish Institute of Economic Affairs, Konrad Szymański, and Michal Kořán, founder and CEO. No, you still want to call yourself founder of Global Arena Research Institute. So Michael is an academic and researcher on the verge of business, politics, and big data. Thank you that you came to untypically Polish panel, because we have about 45 minutes for two speakers and one moderator, which is not typical for this conference, so we can deep dive in some of the topics. I would start with a, let's say, broader question of where do you see now Czech and Polish position on those cooperations on reaction on the Ukraine war, where we have discussions about shifting the center of gravity of the European Union into the more Central Europe or eastwards, Is it really that our position within the EU has strengthened or not in terms of economic, in terms of politics, in terms of power? Let's start with Mr. Szymański.
Thank you. Thank you for this invitation. I have a feeling that it's a great comfort indeed to have a discussion like this with plenty of time and very respected interlocutors. To answer your question, I think it's too early to say something very conclusive, of course, but it's quite visible, and war show us very strongly, and it's visible in every single capital, that we need each other in Europe. And it is not a zero-sum game. A growing role of Central Europe, of Poland, doesn't mean that someone else will mean less in this architecture. It's a win-win, because Europe should consolidate its position in many aspects: military aid, humanitarian aid, long-term trade recalibration, I would say. But in the end, we need even more than just European unity. We need a unity of the West, because the challenges we face right now need such a wide denominator, wide unity. And it happened. We all have very reluctant to assess the condition of our allied partners, our ability to work together in a wider sense before the war. But it happened, and it's a very bad news for Mr. Putin and very good news for Europe, that we can consolidate, that we can cooperate with United States, Japan, Switzerland, UK, with quite fresh tensions or narrative problems across the globe. The Western world united again, and this is good news.
Michał.
All right, thank you very much for the invitation. It's also a big pleasure to be here, an honor. Okay, I would say that one thing that definitely stands out in the current context is the way the Czech Republic managed, or the Czech government managed, the EU presidency. I think especially the very last 2 months showed that the magnitude of the tensions among the EU members, and the way that the Czech government, and you know me, I'm not really the guy who would praise the Czech government too often, but in the case of fostering impossible compromises and getting Hungary behind some of the very last minute decisions, I think that shows that the Czech Republic is an able EU actor. So that's one thing, and I would also believe that in many ways the Czech government got more Europeanized with that responsibility, even though, and that's the B, the Czech government is now facing immense pressures in terms of economy, in terms of social issues, and so on. And since the elections will be coming closer, I would say that this sort of pro-European stance might be changing. So this is one thing, but that experience is something that we will not lose, I believe. The second thing is that the two governments now see much closer eye to eye than they have 3 or 4 years ago. Obviously, the tense issues like Turów mine or these traditional issues are still there, but I believe that at this point it's one of the closest alliance in Europe in terms of geopolitics.
And where do you see kind of concrete possibilities where this alliance can materialize? Because both governments, current governments, are a little bit more skeptical than is the European average, to say so. Where are the possibilities to cooperate on the European level?
Well, that's okay. This is the question for the policymakers. I can only speak about the common challenges, and I'm sure that we will get back to it later. But one of the big challenges, and the previous discussion was very much about that, is the heavily industrialized region of Silesia and in general north of the Czech Republic and south of Poland. And these regions are facing very similar grave challenges when it comes to the digitalization and energy transitions. So that's, I think, how to approach the industrial transformation in a way that that these regions won't be hurt. That's for me one of the biggest topics in practice. But again, it's more on the policymakers. Obviously, the issue of the Russian aggression towards Ukraine is another very specific area, and there are differences in ambitions and capacities on both sides. But at the highest political level, I think this is another very strong point. Obviously, the energy transition, that is something that the previous panelists were also speaking about. The challenge is very similar, but the approaches will be, I think, more contradictory than cooperative. But again, the general challenge is very similar. So these are three, very broad examples. But once you dig deeper into the details, obviously you will find a lot of problems.
Well, to problems we will get later on, but let's speak now about these possibilities to cooperate on EU level. Konrad Szymański.
I think that the accidents happen. Every single member state has its own internal political dynamic and sensitivity, let's say. To judge, to assess the relations between two countries in such a wide family like EU, you need a little bit more of perspective to keep the proportion. And I think when you see the Central Europe and specifically Poland and Czech Republic now, you can easily find that the pillars, the fundamentals are very, very similar. We all agree that the internal market and trade integration of both our countries is very beneficial to our economies, not only in terms of nominal things, but also in terms of quality, because the reforms, the road we remember last 30 years wouldn't happen without almost 20 years of trade integration in internal market. It created a lot of an enormous added value to our economy. The different thing is, of course, we are all very beneficiary of EU budget. Probably Czech Republic will leave the cohesion club a little bit earlier than we, no doubt. But EU budget plays a significant role in acceleration of our development. It matters. Most important thing today, I think we share the same world view about the security. We all agree that Europe should do more on security, but it doesn't mean that we would like to accept the logic of championships in EU, especially industrial base. We all agree that Europe is not enough to face the challenges we have ahead of us. That's why we pay attention to role of NATO. We pay attention to the wider camp of Western countries. I think it's enough. It's quite strong fundament for very effective cooperation and very good mutual understanding between our countries, governments, and societies as well.
And so now, not to have such a rosy picture, where do you see that the Czech and Polish governments, be it current ones or any future ones, will not find a common ground on, let's speak about European topics, where we really have a different interests and different approaches?
I wouldn't say about different interests, but for example, the dynamic of climate transition in Czech Republic is a little bit higher. Of course, the starting point was different. We are the only country in this region without nuclear technology for so many years. We are trying to join this club. Politically, we joined this club even before, but practically it is still ahead of us. So I think here you can see a real change. decarbonization of energy production in Czech Republic, if I remember well, it's 48% since 1990. In Poland's case, it is of course very rapid, especially last years, but it's not more than 20% in energy production. I'm not talking about the whole industrial base. So it means that, for example, in the discussion we have right now about the ETS system, Czech Republic isn't so strong about the problem of divergence or deficit of allowances in this whole system. We are paying unproportional high price for this transformation. For Czech Republic isn't such a frontline problem. So this is the difference. But it doesn't mean that the interests are contradictory. There are slightly different interests, slightly different priorities on board when we talk about the climate.
Michal.
One thing that comes to mind is the sort of competition over investments, obviously, because we still have very national approach, obviously, and the current global situation, economic situation, points at the fact that a lot of economies will need to sort of invest themselves through the coming headwinds. So that's definitely, this competition is something that is definitely going to be happening. But I don't think it relates to the policy making at the EU level. But that is something that we need to take into account. And obviously, this competition could be beneficial for both countries. The second issue is how to approach exactly the structural or cohesion funds, especially when it comes to vulnerable regions, drafting the policies and being able to absorb the finances. That's another, I would believe, issue of competition. Agriculture policy, probably that's a place where the two countries do not see eye to eye. But what I would like to say is that usually you sort of lump these agendas together, and I do not see Czech and Polish governments being those that would be undermining the way to compromises. However, what I would like to say is that we need to take into account the politics could change after elections in Poland, especially then in Slovakia, just to take into account also Slovakia in the autumn, and we don't really know what sort of rhetorics will the Czech government adopt in the following months regarding the EU. So this is rather a broader picture.
If we go to one specific topic which connects us, and this is common currency euro. We are both in the club of non-euro countries without signals that we would like to introduce euro in the upcoming years. Let's say so. Do you think that this topic will come more on the table when, for example, as Mr. Minister said, the Czech Republic will get closer to the situation where it will be net contributor to the EU budget, or this, and because business is already using in both countries is using euro currency and accountancy in the Czech Republic. There is supposed to be new law on this, for example. So will this kind of push the need for introduction of euro, this situation where we will be net contributors in both countries, and that discussion will be more intense, or we will stay in this non-euro club of EU members for a longer period, Mr. Minister?
No, I think the question of Eurozone accession isn't directly linked to the budgetary position of the country, but it could be linked from the purely pragmatic or economic point of view, could be linked to the real economic convergence. And of course, from my perspective, it is much more attractive to join the same currency area when your economy is really converged, when you can feel comfortable in this sphere of even deeper coordination of, in this case, monetary policy. We are not still there. We are approaching this status because both countries, I mentioned it at the very beginning, are very successful in terms of economic convergence. We are gaining better and better position in this European hierarchy, but it's still not happening. I think more fundamental thing with Eurozone is a question mark, still present question mark around this project, because after 2008, the trust for euro integration, I mean currency integration, dropped significantly in Poland. It is before that time, I think the skepticism or doubts were.
I remember in Krynica, Prime Minister Tusk announcing euro introduction in 2011.
Even this, of course, in the electoral context, you can say a lot, but it happened. Yes, it's true. I think the thinking that time was that it is rather attractive to say this, and not and that's why it happened after 2008. I think this trust dropped significantly. Before that time, the only persons skeptical about the currency integration was the traditional part of this dispute, of this debate, the people who believe that it is not exactly a perfect currency area, and all this macroeconomic, let's say pragmatic economic critic of the currency introduction, the common currency introduction. After this, I think we have a very stable, very significant change of social reaction to this. Poles are definitely one of the most pro-European countries in nations in Europe, but in the same time, the acceptance to Eurozone is much less visible in society. So it could change, but I think it will not change significantly before Eurozone will not explain what is it in the future. And we know that the internal contradictions in Eurozone are still not solved. So I think we have to wait a little bit.
Michal, Czechs and Euro.
Well, I would very much agree with what Mr. Minister just said, and I would add just few things. If we're waiting for the convergence to happen, I think we will probably not have euro in many decades to come. And I don't want to be too skeptical, but looking at the at a variety of macroeconomic indicators, the convergence very much slowed after 2007 and 2008, and it did not really pick up the speed. In many areas, actually, we're even looking at no convergence at all, or even divergence. So I think that's one thing that we need. I think we need to reframe the entire idea of convergence. You know, whether that's the measure stick for everything, and at the political level, I mean, Martin, you know this much better than me, but I do not see some major developments in the Czech debate about euro. I think that the camps.
I was recently asked by one of my Polish colleague about the euro, and I said, well, it's non-topic.
Exactly. It sometimes it just pops up out of the blue, but I think that the positions, the actors, have not changed. I mean, big part of the business community would welcome it. Big part of the political community would not welcome it. They know that euro will not win elections for them. That's for sure. So not being a close follower of that of the euro issue, I would be very skeptical that anything will be changing anytime soon.
Another topic which is somehow similar to both countries, it's a trade and situation, and let's call it globalization issue. We are both quite open economies. We are both quite dependent on the international trade. Even in Czech Republic, the dependency is much higher than in case of Poland, which has quite strong internal market. But we are seeing the changes. Konrad Szymański, you framed it in the previous panel by different words like Frenchoring and slowalization, or how to call it. Where do you see, or to frame it differently, is there within this Frenchoring, is there a possibility that the both businesses in both countries will be looking for much closer cooperation because they will be forced to do that because of these changes in the global supply chains and global trade cooperation? or will this trend not force Czechs and Poles to cooperate more? Or is it opportunity for both economies, or is it complication?
I think both, because you can't create and deliver such a complex issue like the recalibration of the world trade. We lived for the last 30 or more years in a paradigm of free trade across the globe with a lot of successes, because it is of course a challenge today, but it is also very profitable for both Czech and Polish economy. There's enormous development of world trade. And now, today, I think we all see that we need a recalibration, because too much resilience to especially non-friendly countries, or possibly non-friendly countries, could create an enormous problem for our security, a hard security and wider social security. And we already experienced it. And that's why this issue is a real challenge. We should do something with this. But in the same time, I think we should be very careful what we are doing, because it doesn't mean that we can do whatever we want with trade, because the price would be too high, and it doesn't mean that it's necessary to do an enormous fundamental shift from free trade to protectionism. Protectionism isn't an answer for the challenges of today. So we have to be careful with delivery of this recalibration. It will happen to some degree. We still don't know. It depends on the price. What does it mean in terms of costs? We know that the cost will happen. And here we have a discussion and a big question mark, how to accommodate this cost. Because we need a more intelligent solution here. Just the relaxation of the state aid rules isn't a solution, especially for our
business will be asking, we will be,
and rightly so.
we will be
Rightly
happy
so.
to do it differently, but it will cost us more. So what we can expect from the state?
The relaxation of the state aid rules isn't a solution. It is, of course, as a subsidiary emergency instrument. It's right. We did it because of COVID. We are doing it because of the decoupling from Russian energy sources. But for the longer perspective, it is not sustainable scenario, because in the end we can devastate single market, and we can't accept it, because it is the backbone of our development. So we need something more. We need fresh money. For some sectors, most exposed to this unfriendly competition or unfriendly dependence.
What's your view, Michal? You have a lot of data on this, I guess.
Yeah, that data is what we have. That's true. However, what we don't have is an understanding where the European Union is going on trade. I mean, what definitely happened is that the EU came to a realization that it's not in a position where it can sort of how to say, frame the global trade structure. It's not, Europe is simply not in a position to be able to do that. So now the European Commission, European countries are desperately trying to gauge what's the future of global trade gonna look like and how to position itself within it. What I mean in particular is that, I mean, for example, if you compare the three big strategies of the EU, Lisbon strategy, then Europe 2020, and the latest one, Europe 2019-2024, you can see the change in language, towards more protectionist, towards more autonomy. But how is that going to look in practice? Nobody really knows. It's all just full of, and I don't want to be critical, but it's just full of ideas of, let's select these sectors where we need strategic autonomy. Let's keep these sectors open. But it's not our call to make, because we're dependent on other actors to make those decisions. We don't even know what will be the EU-US trade in the future. Are we going to be in the same sort of pool of economies, or are we going to diverge? And I would call this meta strategic uncertainty for Europe. So it's very difficult to make any policy decisions if you don't know where globalization.
So you don't
is
see
going.
the place for a kind of Czech-Polish cooperation on this issue to make some kind of common position and push it through the EU.
Well, that's what I'm
They're
saying.
too small for that.
I'm not saying that we're too small for it. The thing is that we just don't know which way the world is heading, so we don't even have any policy options to make. That's what I'm trying to say, because even the idea of friendshoring, which sectors are gonna reshore? Is it some sort of low to mid tech to mid level technologies which are not strategically vulnerable? So is that something that relatively well developed industry base in the Czech Republic could be vying for, or is it something that can keep flowing freely between Europe and China into the future? We just don't know. Definitely Czech and Polish, in my opinion, I'm very skeptical in this regard. Industry base and tech base is not ready for some high tech chip making, but it's not only about chip making, it's also machinery, it's commodities. So and since we do not know which way the world is turning, it is very difficult to build any alliance. And the last point on that is that I believe, and that's what I already said, I believe that the Czech and Polish economy will be very much in a competition when it comes to the potential reshoring. But then again, reshoring is mostly US and Canadian agenda. Brussels is still very much reluctant, and why are they reluctant? Because they don't know which way China is going to go. China, which is now trying to support its domestic demand so that it can strip itself from the global dependency. China, which is now trying to build supply chains around its own import needs, is doing everything to get more shielded from the global economy. And if Europe starts doing the same, not only that we further go down the spiral, but we will make things more less accessible, more difficult to produce, with all the negative aspects. But if Europe does not go this road and leave itself exposed to those global changes, then it might be even worse. And these are the dilemmas that we have no answers for. So sorry, that's my take on it.
As a moderator, I'm supposed to get out of you, some answers. And I have one question for Konrad Szymański, because in previous panel you have mentioned that the EU should have a smart policy towards China. What should such a policy look? Because China, you cannot avoid China as a partner, competitor. Well, what was the definition? Strategic competitor. So how this, if you would be the one to design this smart policy toward China, let's make it as an exercise, having more weight of EU power in the Central Europe, and you are supposed to design this smart policy towards China. Well, how does it look like? How does it should look like?
I made this comment in comparison to Russia decoupling, because the Russia decoupling from fossil fuel appeared to be quite easy for Europe, for European Union. In case of China, if you really want to reduce the problem only to China, it's, I think, more complex. We need definitely more complex answers, and that's why I said so. I think both Poland and Czech Republic are sending more or less the same careful message, that we need a careful approach. We could agree that we definitely need more resilience of our economy. I mean, our as a wider than Europe economy, because we experience the problems. They experience the exposition which is too high for our security. So we are ready to pay the price for security. That is obvious, but we have to keep control over this price, which means that we should concentrate only on sectors where the exposition to external actors are definitely important. And here we are talking about renewables, energy-intensive production, health, mainly. Also services, especially data and cloud services. But here we have quite different nature of dependencies, because here we are competing mainly with the US friendly country. I think we are building the new paradigm, and here we have a consensus. But now, indeed, we need a much more strict definition what we mean by friend-shoring, reassuring, because here we are talking about much higher numbers, much higher costs. So we have to be careful. That's my my message. We have to also remember that this consensus around friend-shoring or nearshoring happened in the wider context of something not so helpful, which is a protectionist tendencies in Europe and US. We should remember that the blocked WTO reform is a question much older than COVID or war. We should remember that the slow tempo, slow dynamic of EU trade policy is a matter of last 10 years, not just 3-4 years of multiple crises. So there is a wider context, and we should find a proper understanding here, not to mix the two things, the old-fashioned protectionism with the new approach to let's say recalibration of world trade.
Question which will be maybe posed by some Eurofederalists, so I play for a moment. Roland, wouldn't be the help in this situation, as Michal described, quite without hope, or the wider integration within the EU and in some sectors, or wider integration in general?
Okay, I will get to that, but I will, if you will, Martin, I will get back to the previous question about the smart China policy. So if we accept the fact that trade is no more just about trade, but it's about geopolitics and geoeconomics, and I think we have to accept that. However, that's unfortunate. I think that the smart policy towards China would start with understanding Chinese vulnerabilities in its economy and its trade, to understand its and rightly interpret its economic intentions, so that in the case of some sort of escalating trade conflict, we know where to hit and understand the impact on the EU economies. And that's one thing. The other thing is to watch very closely the sort of strategic political economy ties that China is trying to build with so-called non-aligned countries, whatever that means, the global South, Africa, Latin America, and other Asian nations, and to try to exploit the mistakes that China have done in those countries, and to try to increase European presence there. I know this is something that we have been talking for the past whatever decades, but now there is this strategic urgency. And I know that this is very difficult because the individual European countries have different issues, or they don't care. There's the post-colonial legacy and so on. But this is another part of the smart strategy. So to sum up, define the sectors in Europe which are most dependent on China, define the vulnerabilities in China, and then start the debate from that.
So this could this widening of integration be part of the solution? For example, in foreign policy, if we are staying with this China issue,
well,
trade policy.
Well, trade policy is pretty much integrated already, but well, yes, in general, yes. If the EU as a whole is more efficient in its policy and decision making and is more united, that would definitely help. But that's something that is not going to happen, obviously. So for example, looking at just looking at the investments into research and development, into innovation, is still very fragmented. There are no there are unified goals at the EU level, but it never really yielded the right results, especially when trying to translate the research into capital. You still see IP leaving the EU. So these are definitely areas where more unified Europe would be much helpful. But I'm a realist in that regard, and I do not really see the movement towards that goal.
Konrad Szymański, would that work? This widening of EU
First of all, we have to remember that trade policy is fully a community policy, and it works as it works, quite good. But with some obstacles anyway, because you can see that in case of mixed ratification, you can face the obstacles in some capitals, including Central Europe, traditionally very free trade oriented. But the situation is changing. I think we are more and more converge with the problems of the West, also in trade. In case of foreign policy, efficiency isn't the only criteria we should use. Also, the quality is important. One example, we have this experience right now. If the foreign affairs policy could be formulated based on QMV, European Union would invite Putin just before the war to the European summit. We could block it, I think rightly, only because of the anonymity. The same goes with the quality of our whole reaction to war. In this case, I don't want to say that in every case. There are situations where the anonymity could reduce the common denominator to the bottom. But in case when you need to react, because it's strategic, the anonymity enrich the position of the European Union. And this is the case in Ukrainian war. We couldn't deliver better with the QMV, because the QMV would mean that France and Germany would more or less dictate the position, which would be much more reluctant, much more unclear.
For the last part of our discussion, I would like to stay for a while with the question which united us in the last year, which is common Czech-Polish security and defense policy, basically expressed through the help of Ukraine. Do you think that this is kind of a base for longer term Czech-Polish cooperation on this field? Or I know that there are some there is a cooperation on this field quite a long term, but could that be widened? Could this, or is it just moment which will fade away after a couple of months or next year when we get used to the situation, unfortunately? Or do you think that, do you see the possibility of, I was asking the Director General Marian Pecha about the possibilities of defense industry cooperation or increased possibilities. So is this something which can get us closer on political or economic terms? Michale.
Well, I would be content with the way things are now compared to the way things were some 3 years ago. And it's obviously very unfortunate that the trigger is such a tragedy and suffering in Ukraine. Judging from the past, let's say 2 decades of experience with this topic, I do not think that some real structural changes will take place, because the industries are will still be in competition in many ways. Maybe that by exposing the vulnerabilities of the European defense industry, that might be some more structural push for more integration. But you know, I am skeptical about that. Also, the ambitions in the defense policy are really very asymmetric when comparing Poland and the Czech Republic. And even though I believe that this asymmetry got shrank a little bit in the past months, the capabilities of Poland and the Czech Republic are still very incomparable. So my policy recommendation would be to build on the experiences gained up until now, for the past year, try to build as much on that as possible, but I would not envisage some far-reaching bilateral partnership in that area once, hopefully, that tragedy in Ukraine will be over.
Mr. Minister, what's your position?
I think war shows very clearly, and not necessarily to Warsaw or Prague, but to Brussels, that we need profound development of military industry across the continent. The reality today is quite different. The majority, enormous chunk of European Defence Fund probably will be swallowed by 5 biggest European companies, and there is no single Polish or Czech companies among even 25 biggest. So the countries who are willing to develop the military industry should be allowed to do, should be invited to do, should be supported. And this is not exactly the case in many European distribution of specific funds. We have rather negative experience of the research and development funds. EDF doesn't look very promising. I think the world should change this logic, because we have very limited capacities of production. We know it right now that the capacities are too low. So those willing to develop capacities should be supported by Brussels. It's not the problem between Czech and Poland. It's a problem of our relation with Brussels, and Brussels understanding what is necessary today.
And what about this, let's say, policy level of security cooperation? Do you see that Poland is able to kind of cooperate with much smaller Czech Republic in these terms? Because we see quite a lot that the Polish government, any Polish government, is on these issues quite acting on its own, and not. We have a just funny story from the COVID, how Polish army occupied part of the Czech territory with small chapel, which was not coordinated. Basically, it's a funny story, but it shows that the Polish military has maybe some troubles to communicate with its neighbors.
In a crisis situation, many things happen. I think they are not representative to anything important between us. And to be honest, I wouldn't call Czech Republic in military industry sense a small country.
Thank you. I know that according to the old NATO plans, Czech army is supposed to help to defend Warsaw. So we are supposed to be friends. At the very end, I cannot resist to ask you both about the idea which is floating around thanks to the French president, which is a strategic autonomy. Where do you see this term will end up as a part? It will end up as a kind of stronger European pillar of NATO, or will there be something else within the EU in that in a couple of years, or is it will disappear after Mr. Macron will leave his office?
No, I think it's traditional French creativity in this sphere. Of course, creativity intellectually isn't anything wrong, but of course, when you are hearing the elected president, it could be more problematic. I appreciate the intellectual creativity of Mr. Macron, but in the same time, I think it's a risky game, because the message we send to the outer world, especially in such a situation like today, it should be a little bit more clear. And the autonomy is very ambiguous term. In essence, I have nothing against playing as Europe a more important role in defense and security. We should do it because we have defense and security interest. But sometimes I hear the tone that autonomy means rather a waste of time in mutual competition with our closest allies, and then we have a problem. That's why we created this even more ambiguous term in Brussels, open strategic autonomy. And of course, we all feel a little bit better with open strategic autonomy, but still don't know what it means in real world. I think in real world, what we need is more spending and more active role of Europe in security, together with our allies, all our allies, because the scale of the problems we face is too big to spend time in this very sophisticated discussion who should be allowed to be a partner of Europe.
Michal.
I understand the logic behind it, because there are politicians in Europe that just don't want to be caught in between the US-China struggle or competition. It's a competition which is not of Europe's making. The reason is that our level of technological development is nowhere near to the table where this competition is taking place. So we feel that we're in a sort of more neutral position, which we're not, obviously, because we're dependent on the US technologies very substantially. So I do understand the logic behind it, and I understand that there is this thinking that the US will be very unpredictable in the years to come. So we need to build some sort of autonomous pillar. And as long as this increased defense and trade capacities are in line with the transatlantic partnership, then I do not have a problem with that. But the problem is, as Minister Szymański already mentioned, is that it's not framed. It's not always framed within the U.S. EU partnership, and okay, to be very blunt, it's exactly what it is. It's a term which is floating, which has no real meaning, because we do not even understand what it really means. In what areas do we want to be autonomous? Is it transatlantic driven autonomy? Is it really European autonomy? If it's really European autonomy, then it's nonsense. It's just not. It doesn't make any sense. That there is no way Europe can be fully strategically autonomous in this global world. So it's a catchphrase. And I think that Central Europe should, that's one thing that probably would link us, is to be very careful about this and try to steer this term into ways which are more meaningful than in that case.
So we are getting to the topic we have started with this shift of the I wouldn't say power, but let's say intellectualism from the West to the Central Europe of how about the thinking about the future of the Europe, and about how we see the Europe. So we can, and the Czech, Polish, we can agree, and this is not the way how to think about things. I guess I'm just I was just curious to know about this, because there is now this very practical thing, the debate about how and where to produce ammunition for the Ukraine. And as far as we are informed from the negotiations, it's France which is blocking this common plan, because they want to have it produced in the French factories, while we also have our own factories. Of course, they are running on the full capacity and having not enough people and industry to produce that. So it's like funny story on one side to see this intellectualism or intellectual exercise, and on the other side to see this very practical thing, which in many layers can unite us. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your debate, for your time, for your opinions. Konrad Szymański, former Minister for European Affairs and now Deputy Director of Polish Institute of Economy, and Michal Kořan, Founder and Director of Global Arena Research Institute, Czech political scientist. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching this next debate of Czech-Polish Forum of Dziennik Gazeta Prawna and Hospodářské noviny, and the next debate will be much more about the business, because it will be full of businessmen, and I pass the word to Marek Teichmann again.
Ja i Państwa przedstawię. Proszę się w czasie rozmowy i cieszyć się rozmową. Wszystko, co dotyczy ekspansji zagranicznej. Dzień dobry, witamy Państwa. Welcome back to our Czech-Polish panel discussions and forum in which we discuss the cooperation, in which we discuss the prospects for the Polish and Czech investments and business cooperation. We had a general view on the European perspective in the panel previously. Before that, we were discussing the chances for Europe, Central Eastern Europe, to become the industrial powerhouse of Europe and maybe of Western world. And this would be one of the topics that we will be discussing over here, the investment potential, but we will focus much more on the cooperation between businesses, on the problems that companies face when investing in Poland and in Czech Republic, and hopefully we will address as well one problem that was not mentioned before, but is present in many discussions with the companies and managers and leaders, which is the lack of the human talents, enough human talents to develop. Let me introduce our guests. Łukasz Grabowski, Director, Center for Exports, Polish Investment and Trade Agency. Hello, sir.
Hello, good afternoon.
Ewa Łebno-Fałęcka, Head of Corporate Communications and External Affairs, Mercedes-Benz Polska. Hello. Jan Romanczuk, Head of CE Market, TMF Group. Hello. And Marek Malik, Partner at Jet Investment. Hello.
Hello.
We are present on Dziennik Gazeta Prawna web pages. We are present on Gospodarskie Nowiny webpage. And there is a promise. There is a promise in Polish-Czech cooperation, and there is a promise in these hard times. The promise that the security needs will change the way we invest, will change the globalization, and will give the boost in investment coming to Central Eastern Europe. There is a lot of people hoping that there will be this kind of a friend-shoring, that the companies will be locating their production in Central Eastern Europe to cut the long supply lines and to be secure. Ewa Łebno-Fałęcka, you have the perspective of what's in the head of the big international investors, how they make a decision. And the first question is to you, how they see our region, how they see Poland and Czech Republic, and from your point of view, are we competitors, or are we supplementing cooperating partners? And the last word I will drop into this question: energy. This is the thing that is coming on and on and on in every discussion over here in Katowice, and every discussion about the competitiveness of the economy.
Thank you very much, Czech panel. I'm rather familiar in the Polish-German relations, but I see the cooperation between Poland and Czech Republic rather in the context of the new position of Eastern Central Europe after all the changes you've mentioned before. If we have a look over the last decade, we had financial crisis, 2008. At that point, kind of the globalization has started. You've mentioned friendshoring. By the way, friendshoring is a term used by Janet Yellen, the Secretary of Treasury, and she addressed it to the rather system rivals, so like US and China, let's say. So I would rather not use this term for the European cooperation, because we are Poland, Czech Republic in the EU. So friendshoring I would reserve for things happening outside of EU. But then we had pandemia and war, so all the plagues at one time. The same time, the technological change, because my automotive industry is in a state of a complete revolution. It is not only the revolution of electromobility, but you have the automotive industry. We say cars are now software designed cars or software defined cars. So actually you are working not with steel and aluminum and so on. Of course we do also, but we are working on big data. And this situation shows that actually Poland, Czech Republic, we are all in the same region, in the Eastern Central Europe. We had an interesting discussion yesterday, German-Polish, and I liked very much Markus Reichel, the member of the German parliament. He said, actually, Poland is the fifth trade partner for Germany. Germany is our first partner. Actually, what we do is a Polish-German economy.
Yeah.
So probably we could also say Eastern Central Europe had a great chance if we stick together, if we cooperate, because from the transatlantic perspective, we are small, very small stones in a big mosaic.
And but is it true that we and Czechs, Poles and Czechs, compete all the time for attracting investments coming from Germany, or it's not the story anymore? Because this is the historical perspective, you know, the Poles, Czechs, Slovaks competing who will get the next car making factory.
But you see, actually, we do not compete. Mercedes, how shall I put it? It's not a competition between Poland and Czech Republic. Who I compete with is Mercedes-Benz, our own company somewhere else. Because with the first investment in Javor, it was circa 1 billion euro. We have checked 35 localities in, 15 countries. So we compete with another Mercedes-Benz plants and companies. This is maybe you will be taken aback and taken by surprise, but it is really so.
And the very last thing, the energy I mentioned, this is number one issue for many companies. As far as I understand, when you compare Poland and Czech Republic is having a better regulatory situation when it comes to producing the green energy, and this is the main story for many investors: access to the green energy. This is the key.
That's absolutely right. And the first question, if a foreign investor comes to Poland, is how can I get the green energy? We did it 7 years ago. It was before Green Deal. It was before Fit for 55 and so on. So because it is in our DNA, let's say. And our factory, which started the production 2019, was completely CO2 neutral. Also, the next factory producing batteries, and now we have a huge project over 1 billion euro once again, and it will be green. And in Poland, it is, the situation from last Sunday. As in Poland, the
over
wind
50% of the
it was too much green energy, and Polskie Sieci Energetyczne, the Polish transmission company, they had to block the grid, the green energy coming to the grid. So the Polish problem is not the amount of green energy, because it is already 20% and it could be much, much better. And the problem is how to connect the green energy to the grid. This is a problem of flexibility of the system, and this is as my colleague, because I'm not an expert in energy sector, they say this cable pulling and all the regulation, it is just old, and what Polish economy should invest in are the transmissions lines.
Okay, thank you very much, Ewa Odnofałęcka. And right now I'm turning to Joanna Romanczuk, because in a way Mercedes-Benz was giving the industrial perspective, and you have your company have a general outlook on the CE market, and your company has a very interesting perspective on both human talents acquisition and the situation, and as well the needs of the companies. So what's your take on where are we when it comes to the Polish-Czech cooperation, Czech-Polish cooperation? Where are we heading, and are we using enough of the chances that we have in this cooperation?
Thank you. That's a great question. So I think from foreign direct investment perspective, what decision makers are looking at are few elements. So access to labor force, how easy is it to make business in a given country, and also all of the surroundings infrastructure. If you focus on those elements, then according to the Global Business Complexity Index, Czech is much easier to do business in. A lot of procedures are much simpler than they are in Poland. The regulatory environment is much more friendly towards the investors. But then the second question is around the access to talent. So whether we are able to find the right talent, and both Czech and Poland are facing similar challenges when it comes to attracting skilled workforce, especially if we're talking white collar jobs. The talent is very mobile. They can within EU, they can work anywhere. So it's extremely important to create a proposition that would be appealing to these young people. And each of the countries, they have their specifics in terms of different ethnic groups that feel comfortable moving into these countries. There are companies in Poland that employ over 60% of non-Polish citizens who just moved from different countries within and outside of Europe, right? And how easy it is to settle in a given place is also one of the important factors. Are we using enough our proposition as Central and Eastern Europe? I don't think so. I think we could be doing much more in terms of attracting businesses coming from other places in the world, not necessarily.
How could we do it?
I think we should be more vocal and have more partnership around promoting joint initiatives, and basically showcase the elements that were good, but also leverage the good things that are available in other different countries, right? So with remote work, it doesn't really matter where you are living, right? Because you can work remotely, and that benefits the overall picture, I think. So those are the elements that come to my mind. I definitely, in terms of ease of doing business, these differences among countries even within EU shouldn't be that big. There are countries that are considered super difficult, like France. Poland is also considered pretty difficult and complex, although the situation is improving, whereas Czech is overall persisted as an easy country to do business. And that also builds into the credibility. For a Czech investor to come to Poland, they need to have confidence that the authorities will be supporting the business, that the regulations wouldn't change overnight, etc. Right? That the letter of law will be observed in the same way in every instance. And if that element is missing, that it's more difficult to take the decision of making an investment.
Do you think that because there is a lot of talking about competing for the industrial investments, and of course over here in Katowice, this is one of the key topics during the Congress. But one of the power engines of the modern Polish and Czech economy is the business shared services, generally the service sector that is growing very, very fast and dynamic, and it needs talent. And do you think that it is true that we are as well competing in, building the capital city of Central Eastern Europe, or actually this competition doesn't really make sense because only in cooperation there is a future?
Well, Polish footprint is definitely much bigger. We're a much bigger country. We have just bigger labor force that is available, right? But I'm a firm believer in formulating kind of joint value propositions. So we don't compete each other, but actually position Central and Eastern Europe, Poland, Czech with Slovakia as kind of the direction for those looking forward to set up their shared service centers, BPO. Also, I think that perhaps we're at the start of we've already started the new era where it's less of shared service center, repetitive processes, and more into IT hubs, R&D and research, this type of more sophisticated type of work. And it's actually where we bring most value. None of the countries, Poland or Czech, is considered the location for IT hub. but we see among the top. But we see more and more investment of IT hubs in Poland and in Czech Republic, and I think this is what's definitely gonna come. We have one of the best IT engineers, and we should be taking advantage of that.
Thank you very much. Mr. Malik, when we were having one of the previous conversation, Mr. Arak said that one of the things that we don't do to the extent we should is trade, direct trade. I mean, we are trading with Western Europe a lot, but we are not trading enough between Poland and Czech Republic. And one of the reasons is that we lack infrastructure, and this is something that we need to catch up. But the other thing is that we don't really look enough for the good investment opportunities. On the other hand, there is a lot of financial institutions doing the acquisition, and like the first step for the VC from Poland would be to go to Prague, and very often from the Czech investors to come over here to Poland. So, what's your take? Do we use the chances we have enough, or maybe those who are not using those chances are losing the business opportunity?
Yeah, hello again. Thank you for the invitation. I think that there is a good amount of the trade in between Czech and Poland. Of course, the capital comes from the Western countries, and a lot of Western companies have been investing in our region, in both in Poland and in Czech Republic in the past, and that's why simply the trade in between the countries is not as strong between Poland and Czech, because the capital wasn't here, but it is in between the Czech Republic and Germany, mostly Poland and Germany. But as it has been said quite many times here in Katowice, this eastern part of Central Europe, which is Poland, Czech Republic, and Slovakia, is definitely one of very promising regions in terms of the growth in Europe. I would say that there is very good chance that this region will be really one of the highest growing in Europe, and will be bringing a lot of output to European economy. If you look at on one side there is a very common culture, very unified old system that has been torn apart for 40 years by Second World War, but it is having very solid grounds, and actually it's having solid grounds even with the western part of Central Europe, which is Austria and Germany. That's a one point of the game. The other point of the game is the labor market. We have touched it a bit, but the labor market is still, the cost of the labor market in eastern part of this region is much lower, say 35 to 55%, talking about blue collars. But the quality of people compared to Western countries is actually very high. It's comparably higher.
When it comes to education and technical skills, I mean?
Yeah, exactly that. And this, I think, will bring a lot of growth going forward in upcoming years. If you look at the GDP per capita and purchasing power parity, the Czech Republic would be about 77% of Germany. Poland would be about 70% of Germany. It's quite a high number, to be honest. If you would go more to the east, in Eastern Europe, it would be sub 30%.
But then we are actually losing the. I mean, it's not a breaking news that we are losing this competitive advantage, which was the cheap labor force. But the question is whether we are capable of replacing it. And in the previous panel, Michał Koran said that he doesn't believe that the Polish and Czech industry or service sectors has a capability of introducing the new technologies fast enough. But maybe it's not true. Maybe actually we are doing it, because I see a lot of very fast digitalization processes happening in the industry.
I wouldn't say so. I would completely agree with what you have said.
Mm-hmm.
simply, I mean, there are old industrial businesses. By the way, Central Europe is about 42%. 42% of an industrial output in Europe comes from Central Europe, which is Germany. Of course, it's big in Germany, but also Austria, Poland, Czech Republic, and Slovakia. So it's really industrial heartland. And I would say that these companies are modernized and are really picking up in their performance. We see it. I mean, we have been investing into energy transition. Our firm has been investing into energy transition in past 2 to 3 years. We have bought one company in Poland named Rockfin, the other company in Czech Republic 2JCP, and other one Tidom. And those companies are actually one of the leaders in transition towards hydrogen. Well, we are delivering a hydrogen, like industrial hydrogen systems together with Siemens Energy to the largest corporations in the world, and it comes from the engineering and R&D activities from Czech Republic and from Poland. So I would say we are on a good path to be modernized and still having a very competitive position, competitive cost structure to go forward.
And Marek, the very last question to you in this round: where is the money in the future? I mean, in which? I'm not asking about where you're investing in the near future and which companies are you right now analyzing, but in which sectors is the money?
Well, I would say it's in modern industrial businesses, given the if you speak about Central Europe, if you speak about Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, it's definitely about industrial businesses because there's a big base for these businesses, but these needs to be digitalized, needs to be more innovative, and that's the way how to.
And this is the really last question. Sorry for that, but Tomasz Czechowicz, the head of MCI, the investing company, said that he once told me that he thinks that in Poland or in Czech Republic, you can actually build up the financing on every level and in every way because the financial markets are so advanced. So you can always, construct the financing for the good investment. But sometimes there are not enough good technological companies, small technological companies, that we kind of believe that we are so advanced. But when you look at the startups, they are not that good as in sometimes in Western Europe. Do you agree?
Well, I would agree. Talking about the startup businesses, that's clear.
There is too much hype about how many good startups we have, but actually we don't really have that much.
That's true. We are more matured markets. That's why I'm talking about the more industrial businesses that are having like solid grounds from the history, but being modernized, being more green, being more efficient, and being innovative. Those businesses will bring really great things, great services or products into the market. We were working on this about 25 years, and most of the companies really brought something new into the market.
Thank you very much. Before I turn to Łukasz Grabowski, one additional question for both Joanna and Romanczuk and Ewa Łabna-Fałęcka, because building up on what Marek said about startups, and this is something that I hear very, very often, that we kind of got mesmerized by this idea that, we have to look for the unicorn, small startup companies, and they will grow up. But actually, the real power of the Central Eastern Europe are the medium and small companies, both in service sector, industrial, and this is where we should look for the growth opportunities, for the investment opportunities, and for the transformation opportunities. Just a short question on what Marek said. Do you agree with that opinion, Eva?
Yes, I do. Let's take the example from the automotive industry. I respect startups, innovation. Innovation is the word on everybody's mouth. But the automotive business in Poland, there are almost 1.5 million people working in it. It's 8% of GDP. It's 13 over 13% of exports. So it's definitely successful. And how does it come? It didn't happen via venture capital, startup, and so on. First, the big multinational companies came to Poland. Bosch, Mercedes, Volkswagen, let's say Japanese companies, and so on. And once the big ones are there, the medium and small come and invest, or you have the great chain to the great chance that the Polish medium and small companies want to be supplier. And Poland is at a very high position. I think we are the 9th in the world concerning parts and driving system producing. So I do believe that the industrialization of Poland, which is 70% of GDP, Germany 19%, Czech Republic probably over that, because you are the absolute champion in Europe. So this is our strength. And sorry, but the innovation still doesn't come from internal research. The innovation, and it is very sad, comes from abroad. And when we are talking about the capital, I'm not an expert in finance, but one more remark to the talent, because we are talking about people. This was a very good study of, I think, PwC about what skills are going to be the most valuable in the future. And the European Commission declared this year a year of skills. And you said about technological skills, about different kinds of skills. And they, in the report, they say there are 3 arts of skills which you absolutely need for the future. The first is, of course, the branch skill, let's say. If somebody wants to work in the automotive business, have an idea how the engine works, or how the battery is being working, or how an autonomous car is being operated. But the second is the, let's say, overall skills. So you have to know what are the trends, what are the processes in the world around. And the third one is cooperation. So this special social skill. That's why, and I'm coming to the conclusion, I don't like to talk about competition, because we in Poland are drilled, and the pattern in the school is to compete. Everybody competes with everybody. And this is not the key for the future. So this cooperation, teamwork, this is the clue, and this is really the basic skill, I would say.
Thank you very much, Joanna.
Well, I believe we need to believe in startups. We need startups. We need people with fresh mind. If you want to retain talent, if you want to see talented people staying in Poland, in Czech Republic, in our region, they need to be able to realize their dreams, right? And even if every 10th startup becomes not a unicorn, but at least a solvent company, that's good enough, right? If we create an environment where people can try new things and understand that there are different ways how they can contribute, it's going to be good for everybody, for them, because they will stay. It means that we're going to have more diversified economy, which is good. We're not having all eggs in one basket. And also it's more sustainable, longer way. So I'm a big fan of startups. And anyone it doesn't have to be innovation. It can be just something new, right? But being able to realize own dream is super powerful, also in terms of attracting investment from abroad.
Thank you very much, Łukasz. Sorry for keeping you in a waiting room for a moment, but I wanted to, with a question to you, change the direction of this conversation a bit, because we're talking about investment and cooperation, but right now I would like to focus on trade. As the audience can see, we are live from Katowice over here. And we have a bit of a sound. Okay. So my question is coming back to what Piotr Arak said in one of the previous panels, that we don't trade enough with each other, that we actually go through Western Europe very often. We trade a lot with our Western partners. We are investing heavily in building the connectivity when it comes to roads, railroads, and energy sector. And what's your view on the perspective, on the trade perspective between Poland and Czech Republic? And what's your view on this competition, maybe not between individuals, but between countries? Are we competitors, or are we going to find a common strategy when it comes to attracting the foreign investors over here?
Thank you for having me here. That's a good question. As long as I respect what Piotr Arak usually says, I think I cannot agree with him that we don't trade enough. The story of bilateral trade relations between Poland and Czech Republic, it's a story of success. It's a story of hundreds of thousands of companies, small and medium-sized enterprises that trade with each other, that do this cross-border trade. And the figures confirm that. So last year, so 2022, we observed exports from Poland in the value of more than 22 billion euros. 7% of Polish exports went to Czech Republic. We imported from Czech Republic goods value worth 13 billion euros. And if we see or let's say agree that Czech Republic is not the largest economy in the European Union or in the world, as we are also. We are not top 20, but it's actually a country of several million people, and we trade with Czech Republic more than we trade with France, Italy, UK, United States, China, with global powers. I think that as long as we compete in a positive way, as long as we use comparative advantages, as long as we find these connections between the countries, you mentioned infrastructure, road, rail, energy, that's very important. We will be able to compete with international powers. Today, I feel that we are not talking about competition, internal competition in the European Union. We fight with superpowers like United States, like economies from Southeast Asia, with China, with Japan. This is where the fight is going on. We see that the world economy is going east. The center of the world economy is going east, and we need to accept it. If we accept it, we know we need to, like it was mentioned by the predecessors, we need to fight for talents. We need to not only attract them, but we need to retain them in the European Union, in Poland, as this is a positive trend that we also observe in Poland and probably in Eastern Europe as well, from the region that was once a region of emigrants. People were leaving Poland, leaving the Central Europe to fight and to look for opportunities elsewhere in the world, in Europe. They now see the opportunities and growth and chances in the region. And this is also what other countries say. The foreign investors, they want to set up their presence in the region. It can be a manufacturing plant, it can be business shared services, it can be whatever, just to be present in the European Union with the operations in the neighboring area with other countries.
And a very similar question to the one I asked to Mr. Malik. Where do you see the money in the future? When you look at the trade trends, when you look at the trends in the economy, what's your take on where is the money for the people looking this transmission, for people listening to us? Where do you think you see the growth opportunity in this Polish-Czech environment?
I think that we've reached a moment in the global economy where we have too much money in the economy. The money can be spread, across all sectors. Of course, there are some sectors like with bright future prospects, like the industry 4.0, renewables. It can be a never-ending story of food processing and food manufacturers, because we need food and we will be in need of food all the time. It's pharmaceuticals, it's medicine. We know that the population is getting older and older, so we need to already now start investing in those areas to keep people active and healthy throughout their life. And I believe that the infrastructure understood as critical infrastructure, hard infrastructure, is where the money will be invested in, and the IT world. So everything that goes for digital processes, cybersecurity.
As you are talking, I'm just like thinking about all the sectors that actually we do have over here. In some sectors, Czech Republic is leading, like chemical sector, where it is stronger than Poland. In others, like IT, we are. I mean, we are supplementing each other in so many ways. These common environment. I mean, it is a great place to invest when you're outsider.
It's a great place to invest. Central and Eastern Europe, it's a great place to invest. And if we see the trend of cutting, making the supply chains shorter, and we fight for international investments, be it in the Czech Republic, in Poland, in Slovakia, or elsewhere in the region, we need to cooperate to find those areas where we can offer comparative advantages. So the manufacturing process is complex. You cannot cut it. You cannot you cannot have it all in one place. But as long as you have suppliers, cooperants close to each other, it's going to work. And this is where the world is now going, I guess.
Thank you very much. And the last issue I want to address in this conversation, Eva Abno-Fałęcka mentioned the change in what shapes the product that you are selling right now. The car that used to be a machine, right now it's a digital platform, and this goes to the all of economy. You mentioned industry 4.0, and there is a lot of people believe that the digital transformation will just basically change us very fast. And the question is, sorry for the long question, but I will just use the one interview that I did around 15 years ago. I was interviewing Janusz Filipiak. He's one of the leading Polish business figures, the owner of Comarch, the second biggest Polish IT company present in all of Europe. And I asked him where he's investing in the future, and he said that his favorite place is München in Germany, because over there, he said, I got everything in the circle of in 60 kilometers around me. There is everything I need to build the modern company, technology, people, infrastructure. It was 15 years ago. It was really, really bitter. But I'm wondering whether we have everything right now over here to use this opportunity that the digitalization of the economy is bringing. And the second part of the question, do you believe in this digitalization, or is it another buzzword that is always, like there is always some buzzwords in the discussion about economy? Eva, first of you.
The answer of your second question is easy and short. Yes. It has happened in the auto industry. I mentioned revolution in this industry. Everything is different. The cars are being designed and defined by data. So the car is actually a smartphone on wheels. It's still the car bringing you from A to B, but you can send emails, you can talk with artificial intelligence, you can ask your car where is the nearest pizza, you are sitting in the armchair at home and you can via app check the pressure in the tires and so on and so on. So it's completely different. The second question, you mentioned that Central Eastern Europe is a very good place for investment. Yes, it is. And in the annual Konjunkturumfrage, this is done by Polish-German Chamber of Commerce, Poland, Czech Republic, and Estonia are changing the places. And last year, Poland is champion again. So it's the best place for an investment. We lost this champion position 5 years ago. Now we are back again. And this is, of course, investors claim the flexibility, let's say, of law and overproducing of law acts and so on and so on. But talents, people, skilled, hung for success and so on is the really, everybody mentions it. So Poland is number one. If you ask Munich or Wrocław, let's say, I don't have any ready answer, but our most modern factory 56, which is going on only green energy, where everything is automated and so on, is still in Sindelfingen. What we are going to build in Jawor, taking into consideration that there are many companies I've mentioned before, big and medium size and small companies within the Wałbrzyska Specjalna Strefa Ekonomiczna, which is really Silicon Valley of Poland, I would say. We have a lot there, but the Polish, our suppliers have problems with sustainability. And we as a company are obliged to have partners who are sustainable. So we must not cooperate with companies who have a high carbon footprint. It's in our compliance rules, and this is something which prevents us, which blocks us to cooperate with some Polish companies who are not convinced yet that they have to become green. So this is really
and it's
this
5
is really
minutes,
our concern.
and it is already 5 minutes after midnight when it comes to the
Yes.
Jana.
Well, I think we have it all. And I believe that our proposition is stronger when we don't focus on individual countries, but we position it as Central and Eastern Europe, or Czechoslovakia, Poland, Estonia, as Eva mentioned, right? But we have it all. And with ESG, the green energy transformation is just going to happen. So maybe not all of the components are sustainably there, but I think this is a very good destination for investment and growth.
And what's your take on the digitalization thing? I mean, I mean, it is happening, but are we positioned to benefit enough from the process, or are we going to lose because of the lack of capital or lack of talents?
I think digitalization is an enabler, and it has meant a lot of, due to the digitalization, a lot of things that were impossible before are now possible, that have direct impact on, for example, employees, right? Remote work is just the easiest example, right? But also on the path to green, the elimination of paper, and so on and so forth. So we do need to remember about it, but digitalization is there. We can optimize a lot of processes with digitalization. OCR, I mean, everyone does it. Process automation, all of that. So that also position us to work smarter, not harder, be more efficient, and therefore be more competitive, because the wage arbitrage is gone, right? Mostly. Labor force is almost as expensive and is in some Western European places. But if we use the digitalization and technology smart, we're going to create businesses that are just more efficient. And yeah, but that requires intellectual discipline to think about it and to consistently drive it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Malik.
Well, I will be probably repeating what has been said. So, I mean, digitalization for sure. I mean, 30 years back we had a fax, right? We are using email. That's a digitalization, and it should go forward. I would rather maybe mention one point or touch a point that has been mentioned already. The strengths of this or the potential success of this region is actually in cooperation. The competition is actually no go for this region. It is very important because I mean those the three countries like Poland, Czech Republic, and Slovakia, about 55 million people, it's a size. It's quite nice, and a nice size that can play a role in European Union and worldwide. Needs to be said that if we want to contribute to global economies, we need to grow in a size. There is a lot of small and medium companies in this region. If you would look at how many companies are listed in New York, I mean companies from this region are listed in New York, in London, or in Frankfurt, and compare this number to how many companies are from Israel. That's unbelievable. It's almost nothing compared to Israel. So we need to cooperate, and this is something that only that can move us forward.
One of the things is that we actually could use the fact that we are a region to learn how to grow outside, because many Polish, Czech, Slovak companies has a cultural problem of managing international organization. I mean, we are not used to running the international organization, so it's better to learn it over here where the differences are not that big, and then to grow outside.
That's a big truth, and I have to say that we have to be also more visible. It's unfortunately in the DNA of Czechs, Poles, and Slovaks, and maybe Hungarians, is to be a little bit invisible. If you compare this to Brits, they know how to sell themselves, and they know it like way better than actually Germans, and Germans are very good in it. So, and that's very important. We need to be more visible worldwide.
Thank you very much, Łukasz.
Marketing, it's definitely what we need to learn and we need to develop. We know hundreds of companies known as hidden champions across all different sectors. It's in Poland, it applies to Poland, to Czech Republic, to other countries in the region. We need to teach the world, show the world that, or showcase those best examples of what we have here in the region, to sell it with a good price, with a good margin. And the one thing that I would like to stress and underline is that the time where we were so much focused on competing with other countries, other regions, looking at the price, I think it's long forgone. I think it's the moment where we need to say the quality is here, the value proposition is here in Poland, in Czech Republic, in the region, and we need to start, let's say, charging the clients the good money for what we offer. Because if we just thought that the labor cost is one of the factors that affect negatively the competitiveness of the country, we would be so much wrong, because we would have to tell it to the Brits, to the Americans, to Germans, to Swiss people that you are not competitive because you have very high labor costs. Yes, they have high labor costs, and they are still ranked first, second, or third in the world when it comes to competitive. What they do and what they are very good at, the best in the world at, is the effectiveness and productivity. They get so much value from the unit of what they do than us. And we need to use digital processes, industrialization, and this transformation that is happening just to boost the productivity in our countries.
And this is the good way of wrapping up the panel, because it's a very good message. Thank you very much. Łukasz Grabowski, Ewa Łabdo-Fałęcka, Jan Romanczuk, and Marek Malik were joining us during the panel. Thank you very much. And we are going to have a wrap-up discussion in a moment. Dziękuję bardzo. Parę dyskusji można było zrobić. Chciałem tak narysować, ale to mam nadzieję, że będzie wiedział. A, dobrze, przepraszam.
Masz mikrofon?
Tu?
Po co ci dwa?
A co?
Rozpoczynasz.
Dobrze. Welcome back to our Czech-Polish event where we are discussing the Polish and Czech-Polish cooperation. Marek Teichmann.
Martin L.
Time to wrap up. I have to tell you that I was quite stressed before the whole event. I was actually stressed whether we are going to have enough interesting subjects to discuss, and whether it
There is always enough interesting subjects to discuss. As my long-term thesis is that we don't know each other, so any opportunity to debate between Czechs and Poles is a good one, because then you find topics and things where you can understand each other and where you don't know each other.
Yes, and there are a couple of things that I would really like to follow up. I mean, you were asking the questions about energy cooperation. This is very interesting. I mean, we are countries that are doing the energy transformation, investing in nuclear, investing in renewables, and I don't think that we are doing enough when it comes to. I don't know why. I mean,
I can tell we can stay here for next 60 minutes and to make a list of topics and reasons why it's not working. Because, for example, in Czech Republic, among the experts who are dealing with the energy, there is long-term mistrust in Polish governments, because Polish governments used to plan a lot of projects, but then the government has changed and the projects were abandoned, or they had a long-term differences on that. And the same is with the nuclear. I think the next one could be a Czech-Polish nuclear forum. I think that this will be the topic which is important for both our countries. And because we have experts, you don't have experts.
yes.
There will be need for a lot of construction companies, a lot of specialized construction companies, and the companies which are going to build probably your power stations are going also to build in Czech Republic. So these are the topics.
Because I get a feeling that some people think that like the nuclear power plant is something that you just land somewhere, and this is actually a huge long investment.
Yes, this landing takes about 10 to 15 years just to build it,
and then there is a lot of business opportunities to have.
Yes.
And then the other thing is that I get a feeling that for many years the discussion about Polish-Czech relation was focused around problems, Polish food in Czech Republic, all the blockade, blah blah blah. But this is not actually the biggest case. This was the accidental thing. I mean, it is big, but
it was big case because the Polish food is big part of the Polish import to the Czech Republic. But I think that if you look at the perspective from the perspective of opportunities on both sides, it's much better than because politicians, they say our relations are good, but basically they don't know what they mean, because we don't fight each other, so it means relations are good. But then if you go into practicalities, then you see there's a problem here and there. But to contribute to the solution of these problems is to know each other's views and possibilities and problems.
I got one more question for you, because this was something that we were in a way discussing during this forum, but there was no direct panel regarding it. One of the biggest stories in Poland right now is the future of the BPOs, the business shared services centers. These are big in Polish economy. The logistical hubs, all the call centers, all the audit centers, all the research institutes, the foreign companies are putting their back office over here. And the problem is that many cities like Krakow, for example, invested heavily into attracting that kind of businesses, because they give jobs to the university graduates. But right now we are facing the problem because of the demographics. There is not enough people, and we are trying to attract people from all around the world right now. So these companies are trying. Is it the big thing in Czech Republic as well?
It is, but in industry, in manufacturing companies, we don't have this. Not so much of these service centers, but any manufacturing company, industrial defense industry now, they are struggling. They're importing people from Philippines, from elsewhere
to work in
the factories, in the automotive industry as well.
I think maybe we should have like the human forum next time.
Yes, definitely.
Nuclear and human forum.
and human forum.
By the way, really, it is during the NATO plan. It is the Czech army will be defending Warsaw.
Yes, it was. Because now the NATO plans are totally being redrawn, so I don't know what will be the role for the Czech army next, but it was before.
Okay. I feel safer right now. I think Malbork was captured by the Czech army during the 13 years old war and was never captured from the Czech soldiers over there. Okay, well, sorry. We will have the history panel as well, but maybe next time. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to the audience in Gospodarskie Nowiny. Thank you to the audience in Dziennik Gazeta Prawna. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for an excellent idea to have this forum.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Tak. Nie wiem, czy znasz Kuba Kurasz, PWC Polska i Kazimierz Krupa, czyli były wieloletni redaktor naczelny Forbesa. Cześć. Paweł, chodź.
Siadaj. Nie no, siadamy i zawzięcie dyskutujemy. No, bo my zbieramy alibi na wyjazd.
Że byliście tutaj, tak? Że wcale
Tak.
nie...
Że byliśmy i
3.
wtedy żona powie, gdzie ty byłeś? Taki wracasz jak ućmoruchany. Ja mówię, no dyskutowałem.
Właśnie.
Tak.
Ale nie wiedziałem, że czeska armia miała tutaj, bo jakby to było tak, że myśmy mieli teoretycznie bronić krajów bałtyckich, tak? A... Jezus, mam nadzieję, że nigdy do tego nie dojdzie.
Bardzo
tak naprawdę.
dziękujemy.
Chociaż biorąc pod uwagę, czytałem ostatnio artykuł, to wiesz... Łapiemy się na ścieżce. Dziękuję ci bardzo. Powiem ci szczerze, że ja się denerwowałem.
Ja byłem w końcu tej dyskusji tak zmęczony, po prostu 45 minut,
To już był ten, ale wiesz co, było to ciekawe.
Ale ciekawe, bo ja bym po prostu jechał, że on jak pracuje z politologiem, przepuszczony w tym kierunku biznesu.
Zobaczcie, ja wiem, że